The impossible challenge. The massive biodome stretched across the horizon like a crystal bubble against the purple sky of Nexus Station. Inside, the most prestigious xenobiology training facility in the Galactic Confederation hummed with activity. Today marked the beginning of the infamous final exam that had broken the spirits of even the most talented alien specialists across 12 star systems. Captain Maya Chen stood at the edge of the observation deck, her dark eyes scanning the arena below. Unlike the other instructors, with their chitinous exoskeletons, translucent skin, or multiple appendages, Maya's human form appeared deceptively fragile. She was the only human instructor at the academy, a position earned through years of proving that what humans lacked in natural defenses, they made up for in adaptability and intuition. Another batch of failures incoming, rumbled Director Kistolkian, his massive crab-like body shifting as he approached. 6 eyes blinked in sequence along his ridge. 87% failure rate last cycle. Perhaps we should consider modifying the parameters. Maya shook her head, her short black hair catching the artificial sunlight. The parameters aren't the problem. The approach is. Below them, 24 of the most brilliant xenobiologists in training from across the Confederation filed into the arena. Among them were Varaxians with their silicon-based biology, towering Nulthians with hypersensitive sensory tentacles, and even a pair of crystalline phalanx whose thoughts manifested as color patterns across their surfaces. Each species represented the pinnacle of their respective evolutionary paths, intelligent, educated, and utterly unprepared for what awaited them. "Begin the briefing," Director Kistolkian announced, his voice booming through the speakers. The holographic projector at the center of the arena flickered to life, displaying a massive creature that made several trainees step backward involuntarily. The Ragnar, apex predators from the death plains of HFY. Standing 3 meters tall with armor-plated scales covering their 6-limbed bodies, they featured massive jaws capable of crushing titanium alloy and neural complexity that defied standard classification. Their most distinctive feature was the bioluminescent tendrils that flowed from their spine, a hypnotic display that preceded their most devastating attacks. "Your final exam," Director Kistolkian continued, "is to establish a working bond with an assigned Ragnar within 3 standard rotations. Not capture, not subdue. Bond." A nervous murmur rippled through the students. The Ragnars were infamous throughout the galaxy. 5 separate species had gone extinct attempting to colonize HFY before the Confederation declared it off-limits. The creatures were considered untamable, too aggressive, too intelligent, too unpredictable. "This is madness," whispered a Varaxian trainee. "The Xeric Collective tried for 2 centuries to domesticate them as weapons. They lost an entire battle fleet." Maya's lips curved into a slight smile. The aliens always thought about control, about dominance. That was precisely why they failed. "Each of you will be assigned a specimen," the director continued. "You may use any non-lethal techniques and tools at your disposal. Your performance will be evaluated based on the level of cooperation established between you and your Ragnar. I need not remind you that failure is the expected outcome. No candidate has achieved more than a Class 2 connection in the 60-year history of this exam." Maya stepped forward. "If I may, Director, I'd like to participate in this cycle's examination." The chamber fell silent. Even the director's multiple eyes widened in surprise. "Instructor Chen, this is highly irregular. You've already completed your certification." "As an observer," she clarified. "I believe there's value in demonstrating alternative methodologies." Director Kistolkian's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "You realize the risks. We've lost 3 instructors in the past decade." "I do." After a long pause, he nodded. "Very well. You may join as the 25th participant. Choose your tools from the armory." The armory was a testament to the Confederation's technological advancement. Neural disruptors, pheromone modulators, gravitational restraints, and dozens of other specialized tools designed to subdue, control, or influence alien species. Maya walked past them all, selecting only a small pack containing water, nutrient bars, and a basic medical kit. "That's your equipment?" asked a Nulthian trainee, his sensory tentacles curling in disbelief. "The Ragnars can detect neural patterns. You'll need at least a Class 4 dampener to avoid triggering their hunting instinct." Maya smiled. Sometimes the best technology is no technology. The individual containment chambers activated one by one along the perimeter of the arena. Massive doors slid open, revealing the Ragnars in all their terrifying glory. Even from the safe distance of reinforced barriers, several trainees visibly trembled. The Ragnars paced their enclosures, bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with colors that seemed to drill directly into the brain of any observer. Maya's assigned specimen was a female with obsidian scales and crimson tendrils. Unlike the others, who thrashed against their barriers or stalked with predatory intent, hers remained unnervingly still, watching with intelligence that seemed almost contemplative. "Specimen R17, noted the automated system. Female, approximately 42 standard years. Responsible for 17 fatalities during capture expedition. Extreme caution advised." The trainees dispersed to their assigned stations. Maya observed as they deployed their chosen strategies. The Varaxians activated vibrational nodes designed to mimic the low-frequency resonance of Valk Ivy's magnetic fields. The Nulthians released specialized pheromones engineered to trigger comfort responses. The Phalanx projected kaleidoscopic light patterns meant to establish rudimentary communication. Maya did none of these things. Instead, she entered her assigned chamber and sat cross-legged on the ground, 5 meters from the internal barrier separating her from R17. Then she waited. Hours passed. Around the arena, the sounds of frustration grew. Specialized equipment malfunctioned under the Ragnar's unexpected responses. Neural disruptors proved ineffective against their unique brain structure. Gravitational restraints only seemed to increase their aggression. "Subject appears unresponsive to standard pacification techniques," reported a Varaxian, desperately adjusting the settings on his vibrational nodes. "Pheromone dispersal resulting in increased aggression," noted a Nulthian, retreating as her Ragnar slammed against the barrier separating them. Maya remained motionless, simply observing R17. The Ragnar had begun to exhibit subtle changes in behavior. The pulsing of her tendrils had slowed. She had settled into a crouched position that mirrored Maya's own posture. Instructor Chen called Director Kastokian through the communication system. "Our sensors indicate no attempt at engagement. Do you require assistance?" "No," Maya replied softly. "I'm communicating. Our systems detect no technological interface or biological exchange." Not all communication requires technology. As the first day drew to a close, the trainees retreated to their quarters, exhausted and discouraged. Maya remained. She maintained her position, occasionally shifting only to drink water or consume a nutrient bar. Each time she moved, she did so with deliberate slowness, her eyes never leaving R17. During the station's night cycle, something remarkable happened. R17 approached the barrier, her massive form casting shadows in the dim lighting. She extended one clawed limb and pressed it against the transparent partition, directly opposite to where Maya sat. Maya raised her hand and placed it against the barrier, mirroring the gesture. For several minutes they remained like this, separated by an impenetrable wall, yet somehow engaging in the first successful contact. By the morning of the second day, word had spread about the human instructor's unusual approach. Several trainees gathered to observe as Maya continued her silent communion with R17. "Request permission to lower barrier by 10 centimeters, Maya asked calmly. "Denied," responded Director Kastokian immediately. "Safety protocols can be adjusted with instructor authorization," Maya finished. "I'm authorizing." After a tense pause, the director relented. "Barrier reduction authorized. Security teams on standby." The transparent wall separating Maya from the Ragnar retracted slightly at the top, creating a small opening. R17's tendrils flared momentarily, then settled back into their slow rhythm. Maya reached into her pack and removed a nutrient bar. With careful movements, she broke off a small piece and tossed it gently through the opening. R17 watched the morsel land near her clawed foot. She lowered her massive head, sniffed once, then consumed it with surprising delicacy. "Impossible," whispered a phalanx trainee, his surface flashing patterns of disbelief. Throughout the second day, Maya repeated this process, each time tossing the food a little closer to the barrier. By evening, R17 was approaching the barrier voluntarily to receive the offerings. Not once did Maya attempt to use technology to influence or control the creature's behavior. "What method are you employing?" demanded a frustrated Voraxian. "What technology are you concealing?" "None," Maya replied simply. "I'm just listening." "The creature has made no vocalizations," the Voraxian objected. Maya smiled. "Not all communication is sound. Look at her tendrils, the patterns, the rhythms. Watch her breathing cycle, her eye movements. She's been talking since the moment we met. The question is, are we intelligent enough to understand?" The bond that changes everything. Dawn of the third day brought unprecedented development. Maya Chen stood before Director Kistokyan and the assembled evaluation committee, her posture relaxed but resolute. "I'm requesting full barrier removal," she stated. The committee erupted in protests. 6 different species voiced objections simultaneously, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and modulated frequencies. "Absolutely not," the director finally declared when order was restored. "No trainee has ever achieved direct contact without severe injuries. Even with our most successful candidates, we maintain minimal Class 3 barriers." Maya nodded toward the observation screen where R17 waited calmly. "She's ready. More importantly, I'm ready." "Based on what evidence?" demanded Zoltek, the Phalanx committee member, her crystalline surface flashing patterns of skepticism. 327 voluntary approaches to the barrier, decreased aggression indicators, synchronized breathing patterns, mirrored body language, Maya listed. But most importantly, trust. "Trust is not quantifiable," objected another committee member. "Neither is intelligence, yet we all recognize it," Maya countered. "I understand your concerns, but this exam is about establishing a bond. That cannot happen with barriers between us." After heated debate, the committee reached a compromise. The barrier would be lowered incrementally, with security protocols at maximum readiness. Any sign of aggression would trigger immediate intervention. As Maya returned to the chamber, the other trainees gathered to observe. Their own attempts had yielded minimal results. Several had requested reassignment after particularly frightening encounters. Others persisted with increasingly complex technological solutions, all with limited success. The barrier began its slow descent, centimeter by centimeter. R17's tendrils pulsed with rapid colors, not the aggressive crimson of hunting behavior, but shifting patterns of blues and purples. Maya remained still, hands open at her sides, her breathing controlled and even. When the barrier reached waist height, Maya spoke softly to R17 for the first time. "I see you." The Ragnar tilted her massive head, tendrils slowing their dance. Maya continued talking, her voice maintaining the same gentle cadence. "We're not so different, you and I. Both taken from our homes, both expected to perform, both underestimated." The barrier lowered further. Now only a knee-high partition separated human from Ragnar. The security teams tightened their grips on neural disruptors, tensed for inevitable disaster. Maya extended her hand, palm up, a universal gesture of offering without threat. R17 watched, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Then, with glacial slowness, she extended one massive clawed limb and placed it near, but not touching, Maya's offered hand. "The human has lost her mind," muttered a Nulthian trainee. "Fascinating methodology," countered a Phalanx observer. "Primitive but effective." The barrier lowered completely. Now nothing separated Maya from a creature capable of tearing her apart in seconds. The chamber fell silent. Even the director seemed to hold his breath, his multiple eyes fixed unblinking on the scene. Maya took a single step forward. R-17 remained still. Another step. The Ragnar's tendrils pulsed once, twice, then settled into a rhythmic pattern that somehow seemed synchronized with Maya's heartbeat. "They're harmonizing," whispered a trainee with specialized auditory perception. "Their biological rhythms. They're aligning." With one final step, Maya closed the distance. Her hand hovered just above R-17's outstretched limb. Then, with gentle decisiveness, she made contact. The touch lasted only seconds, but its impact resonated throughout the facility. R-17 didn't attack, didn't recoil. Instead, her tendrils glowed with a soft blue light that no one had documented in all the years of Ragnar research. "Contact established," Maya reported quietly. "Request permission to proceed with basic command testing." The director, visibly stunned, managed to nod. Over the next hour, Maya demonstrated something the Confederation had deemed impossible: cooperative behavior from a Ragnar. Simple movements at first, step forward, step back. Then more complex interactions, retrieving objects, responding to verbal and nonverbal cues. R-17 performed each action not with the reluctant compliance of a controlled subject, but with the willing participation of a partner. "Explain your methodology," demanded the director when Maya finally exited the chamber, leaving R-17 resting peacefully inside. "Respect," Maya replied simply. "The Ragnars don't respond to control because they're not meant to be controlled. They're apex empaths." "Impossible," objected a committee member. "They're apex predators." "Both can be true," Maya explained. "Their bioluminescent tendrils aren't weapons. They're communication organs. They evolved as pack hunters with complex social structures. The patterns aren't random. They're language. When we approach with technology designed to subdue or manipulate, they perceive it as aggression. When we attempt to establish dominance, they resist." "And your approach?" asked the director. "Mutual recognition. I acknowledged her intelligence. I respected her agency. I waited for her invitation." As the examination period concluded, Maya's success stood in stark contrast to the other trainees' failures. Only two had achieved even minimal cooperation, and those with significant technological assistance. The final day brought an unexpected challenge. A critical malfunction in the station's power core triggered emergency protocols. Containment systems throughout the facility began failing. Chaos erupted as various research specimens escaped confinement. Among them was a pack of neurovores, parasitic entities that attacked neural systems, heading directly toward the trainee quarters. Security forces scrambled, but the creatures moved with uncanny speed through the ventilation systems. Maya raced to R-17's chamber. Without hesitation, she opened the door completely. "I need your help," she said simply. R-17's tendrils pulsed with intense colors. She lowered her massive frame, and in a gesture that defied all Confederation understanding of Ragnar behavior, presented her back to Maya. "She's offering you transportation," gasped a phalanx observer, his surface flickering with disbelief. Without hesitation, Maya climbed onto R-17's back, positioning herself between the massive shoulder plates. The Ragnar's muscles tensed beneath her, powerful and controlled. "Find the neurovores," Maya directed, and R-17 immediately moved, not with the lumbering gait expected of her massive form, but with fluid grace that defied physics. They raced through the facility's corridors. Maya pressed low against R-17's armored back. Station personnel flattened themselves against walls, expressions of terror giving way to bewilderment at the sight of a human riding what was universally considered one of the most dangerous creatures in charted space. R-17 paused at an intersection, her tendrils extending and pulsing rapidly. She tilted her massive head, 6 eyes scanning the surroundings, then abruptly changed direction, heading not toward the trainee quarters but toward the ventilation hub. She's tracking them, Maya realized. The tendrils, they're sensing neural activity. They arrived at the hub just as the neurovores emerged, writhing, semi-transparent entities that seemed to distort the air around them. Security forces stood paralyzed, their neural disruptors ineffective against creatures that absorbed energy. R-17 let out a sound, not the roar documented in research files, but a complex series of vibrations that Maya felt through her entire body. Her tendrils flared with blinding intensity, emitting patterns that seemed to disrupt the neurovore's movement. The parasites recoiled, their translucent forms contracting. "She's jamming their neural signals," Maya called to the security team. "Standard containment fields. Now." The team snapped into action, deploying fields that encircled the disoriented neurovores. R-17 maintained her disruptive patterns until all parasites were secured. When they returned to the main chamber, they found Director Kistolkian and the entire committee waiting. The director's multiple eyes fixed on the unprecedented sight of Maya, still positioned comfortably on R-17's back. "Extraordinary," he finally managed. "Not extraordinary," Maya corrected, sliding down from her position with practiced ease. "Natural. When approached as equals, the Ragnars aren't just tameable, they're partners." In the days that followed, Maya's methodology became the focus of intense study. The committee requested a formal presentation, which Maya delivered with R-17 freely moving beside her. No barriers, no restraints. "Humans lack many advantages in galactic society," she explained to the assembled researchers. "We don't have natural armor or enhanced senses. We can't manipulate energy fields or survive in extreme environments. What we do have is adaptability and empathy. The ability to recognize intelligence different from our own and connect with it." She demonstrated techniques that contradicted decades of established xenobiological practice. Where Confederation protocols emphasized control and dominance, Maya showed ways to establish mutual respect. Where others deployed technology to modify behavior, she advocated patience and observation. "The Ragnars were never the problem," she concluded. "Our approach was, we saw their resistance to control as aggression rather than intelligence. We interpreted their communication attempts as threats. We failed to recognize equals." 3 months after the examination, the first Joint Human Ragnar Operations Unit was formed. Maya and R-17, now officially named Artemis, led training efforts across multiple sectors. The once feared creatures became the most sought-after companions for exploration teams navigating hostile environments. Other species observed with a mixture of admiration and unease. The humans, once considered among the least formidable species in the Confederation due to their lack of natural defenses, had turned the galaxy's most dangerous predators into allies. It wasn't through superior technology or dominance, but through a capacity for connection that many species had sacrificed during their evolution. "They're changing the balance," noted a senior Varaxian scientist during a private council. "The humans were manageable when isolated. With the Ragnars as allies, they're not seeking advantage." Director Kistolkian responded, his voice carrying the weight of new understanding. "They're teaching us something we forgot. That evolution isn't just about developing better weapons or defenses. It's about forming better connections." On the observation deck overlooking the new training facility, Maya stood beside Artemis, watching as the next generation of human handlers worked with young Ragnars. Where once there had been fear, now there was cautious enthusiasm. Where there had been control, now there was cooperation. "They said you couldn't be tamed," Maya mused, her hand resting gently on Artemis's armored flank. "They never considered that perhaps you were waiting for someone who didn't want to tame you at all." Artemis' tendrils pulsed with patterns that Maya had come to recognize as contentment. The Ragnar lowered her massive head to eye level with her human companion, 6 eyes blinking in the sequence that Maya now understood as affection. Around them, the Confederation was changing. Old boundaries between species were being reconsidered. Ancient assumptions about intelligence and communication were being challenged. And at the center of this quiet revolution were the humans, physically unremarkable, but possessing something that had become rare in an advanced galactic society: the patience to listen and the courage to connect. "Ready for patrol?" Maya asked. Artemis lowered her frame in response, tendrils glowing with anticipation. As Maya climbed onto her companion's back, she reflected on how far they'd come. The galaxy had feared the Ragnars for centuries, never realizing that what they needed wasn't subjugation but understanding. It was, perhaps, the most human solution of all.